Shalom, my name is Yair Davidiy. I'm speaking to you from the land of Israel. Our organization, Brit-Am, Hebrew Nations, holds the lost 10 tribes. That is the greater bulk of the Israelite nation. Originally there were 12 tribes of Israel, who divided into two different sections. The northern section was taken into captivity by the Assyrians, lost consciousness, awareness of who they were, of their ancestry, but eventually through a series of historical developments they moved to the west. They moved westward. That is where their descendants are now to be found, in the west, amongst Western nations, especially the nations of Australia, New Zealand, of South Africa, of Finland, of Sweden, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, France, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England, and also the USA and Canada. That is where the lost 10 tribes are to be found today. There may be other members or descendants of Israel in other areas, but that is where the lost 10 tribes as coherent, concrete entities are now to be found, according to the Bible. And we prove it from the Bible. We have a lot of biblical proofs, and people accept them. We demonstrate how the biblical evidence points in this direction. We give proofs of it. This is accepted, but we had a request from someone who asked if we could substantiate these claims of ours through secular evidence. Now, we have a lot of secular evidence. We have secular evidence in our books, in our publications, in our articles. And it's there. And it does prove it, or it confirms the biblical proofs. But someone asked that they could have a list of non-biblical sources. And this is what we're about to give. This is what we have, and this is what there is. The Bible is proof. The Bible is proof, and it is enough in its own right. But nevertheless, it helps to have non-biblical sources as well. We have proofs from DNA. DNA studies show that the majority of peoples in the West are from haplogroups such as R1b, that is the male haplogroup R1b, that originated, according to their studies, according to their scientific derivations, somewhere in the Near East, that is in the region of Israel. Near East, Middle East, in effect are the same terms for the general area of ancient Israel, according to the Bible. Now, we're not saying that everyone who has this haplogroup is descended from Israel. We don't know. We don't know enough about it. For all we know, environmental elements may also have been important. We are not so confident in DNA findings, but for people who are interested in them, who do want to believe in them, so there is a lot of biblical, scientific or evidence that is considered to be scientific concerning DNA that does confirm our findings. They also agree, they're beginning to agree, that this haplogroup, R1b, was not in Europe about 3,000 years ago. Or if it was a very small minority had it, if at all. It must have come later, so if you put the two factors together, that it had originated in the Middle East somewhere, and that it did come to the west, move from the east to the west, from the land of Israel, somewhere to the west, and at that time, there was, before the time of the exile of the lost 10 tribes, it was not there, so we can take it as substantiating our beliefs that the lost 10 tribes moved from the east to the west, and moved from the land of Israel to western areas. Now, we are not saying that we are advocating such a theory, because we are not so confident of the results, not so confident of the scientists know what they're talking about in this case, but if you want to go that way, there's plenty to go on, just so that you know. Another proof, which we consider more substantial, that we rely on very heavily, even though we have not done any sufficient research upon it, but but which is definitely evidence, concerns the Megalithic monuments. And Megalithic monuments, dolmens and so on, are types of monuments built out of stone that we find in the land of Israel, we find in Jordan, we find in Syria, we find in areas where the ancient Israelites were in biblical times. And then we later find them in the Caucasus Mountains, and they're going up through the southeast Europe into the west. And we also find them in another pathway going through the Mediterranean region, up through Spain, Portugal, into the British Isles, into Ireland, and also into the Netherlands, into France, Brittany, and also into Scandinavia. And these trace paths of migration. And these dolmens are exactly the same in the land of Israel, or the area of Israel, as they are in Western Europe. They're of the same type. Even the inclinations of the stones, 23 degrees of the roof stone, is the same in both cases. And in Jeremiah 31, Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 21 says, set you up waymarks and signposts, set your heart toward the prepared way, the way in which you went, turn again, O virgin of Israel, turn unto these cities of yours. So Jeremiah is in effect calling upon the Israelites in the end times to use waymarks and signposts from the past to prove that they came from that area of the land of Israel. And the words used, Zionim and Tamrorim in Hebrew, that have been translated as waymarks and signposts, actually mean, according to the rabbinical commentary and also the simple Hebrew language, they actually mean megalithic monuments, stone monuments, and that is what we find, and that is what is there. So this is proof. This is one of the central bodies of evidence, central sources of evidence from what one could say a non-biblical source, but substantiated by biblical passages, showing that the inhabitants of Western European areas came from the Middle East area of ancient Israel. We also have the very name Hebrew. Hebrew is what the ancient Israelites called themselves. And we have peoples in ancient times before the Romans who lived in the British Isles, in Ireland, in Britain, Scotland, Wales, England, and also in Gaul, what is now France and Belgium. That all that area was inhabited by peoples who are considered to be Celts. Celts is what they are referred to in the history books, Celts. But they never really call themselves Celts. This is a Roman term. It's not certain where it came from. What they did call themselves is Iberi or Iberi, and this term, Iberi, actually is the same as the Hebrew term. It's a Europeanized version of the Hebrew name, Ivri or Ibri, meaning Hebrew. And so in other words, they call themselves Hebrew. So this too is a proof. They call themselves after the name that had been known about in the land of Israel. Also, we have other names, other tribal names of peoples in the West. A lot of tribal names, which we can find in the Bible referring to Israelite tribes or to clans and families within the tribes. We have a whole book, The Tribes, written on this subject. We also find that the peoples of this Celtic culture in the West, they practice the Druidical origin, and the Druidical religion, the religion of the Druids, of the Celtic peoples, so-called Celtic peoples, was actually a mixture of Canaanite practices. For instance, they worshipped Baal and had certain ceremonies and so on, similar to those of the Canaanites. The 10 tribes have been exiled because they went in the land in the way of the Canaanites. They copied the way and the practices of the people around them. That is what the Bible says in 2 Kings 17. And in addition to that, they kept some of their Israelite customs and traditions. That is how the Bible describes them, and that is how we find them. That is so. This too is proof. We'll also have Irish legends and Celtic legends from Scotland and so on, Wales, traditions that also point to an Israelite origin. And then we have done this in quite some detail. This is proof and this is evidence, and it exists. We also have the language of the Welsh and the Irish, the Celtic, so-called Celtic languages. They have a lot of Hebrew words in them, and the syntax and the build of the language is also similar to Hebrew. One could say there's a Hebrew substructure upon which was superimposed an Indo-European addition. So this too is proof. Also we have the English language itself. English itself has got a lot of words, and also the psychology of English is similar to Hebrew. And it can be shown that English does have a strong Hebrew input amongst its building blocks. English, as we know, English is a composite language. It's composed of several different languages put together. So one of the foundational elements of the English tongue is the Hebrew language. That too is proof. We also have the psychology. They have a similar type of psychology. Peoples in the West have traditions, and they have ways of thought which are similar to those of the ancient Hebrews. One could say that they picked it up from the Bible. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but it's interesting to note that they have it, others don't. And why did they instinctively identify with this process of thought, this Hebrew process of thought? So maybe it was answering some type of ancestral instinct that always kept with them. Also Jewish rabbinical writings that point in the direction of the Lost Ten Tribes being in the British Isles and neighbouring regions. We know that in Bronze Age Scandinavia it has been proven according to archaeologists that Bronze Age Scandinavia had contacts with the Middle East. They had chairs similar to those made in Egypt. They had a lot of different appurtenances and weaponry, and even customs and drawings, and a whole lot of different attributes similar to those from Middle Eastern areas. And they are considered by some Scandinavian experts, academics, to have come from somewhere in the Middle East area. This too is consistent with them having been Israelites originally. So this too is evidence to show that the Lost Ten Tribes were taken away by the Assyrians. They were taken away in two different groupings, one could say. One group was taken overland into the Assyrian Empire, into the northern regions of the Assyrian Empire, and from there they amalgamated, linked up with peoples known as the Scythians and the Cimmerians, and they moved out onwards. These peoples were known generically and collectively as the sons of Gomer, and the book of Hosea also mentions the Lost Ten Tribes combining or being identified with the sons of Gomer, and these peoples moved to Western Europe. So that is one pathway of migration. Another pathway of migration was that the exiled Israelites were taken away by Phoenicians and ships, and also Philistines. Philistines are known in archaeological terms as Minoans, or sometimes as Mycenaeans, Mycenaean Greeks, but actually they were from Philistia, and they worked on behalf of the Assyrians. Assyrians used them for their maritime projects, and that these Israelites were transferred overseas by Philistines and by Phoenicians in their ships to Western Europe, especially to Spain, as is proven by archaeological findings. And in Spain they moved outwards, they moved to the north, to the west, and they moved into the British Isles. And so too the combination with the peoples who took the other route through northern Europe, together with the Cimmerians and the Scythians, is also confirmed by archaeology. So this too is secular evidence. So taking everything together, taking all the different pieces together and making a composite picture of them, creating an overall picture, conception of what happened, we see that each piece of evidence interlocks with the other, it all intermeshes, and it all, one portion confirms the other, strengthens the other, and it is all consistent with biblical indications according to the Hebrew Scriptures. Thank you. May the Lord God of Israel bless you.